Are you listening? Damn. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Welcome to a special COVID-19 edition of the Weekly Staff, and I have as my special guest, and he's been on the show before, Mr. Milo Hamilton, and I invite you to come back on here because you're the only economist I know of any kind that I know personally. And with everything going on in the world and with the ag markets, but I think with what's happening in general, you're a good somebody for us to talk to right now. So first, just for those that don't know who you are, can you kind of tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you, Stafford. I'm a friend of Stafford Sheridan, and that says a lot right there. We need friends in this time. And I was trained as an economist. I worked for Professional Farmers of America in the mid-'70s, and then I joined Uncle Ben's for 20 years, ran the buying team. Globally, I was involved in buying about $300 million worth of rice, but in the United States, about 180 to 100 million, depending on the market. I had 11 buyers, 30 sales points. We put out a weekly posting of what was being traded, and I had 800 farmers that I worked with. So I've had a long background, and then for the last 20 years I've been in the market advisory business. I don't broker. You need a broker, you need an insurance agent, but you also need a me. And what I do is I help give an idea about the market and what you can do, and then you need to execute through someone. You have to have a trigger puller, particularly if you're out on the farm. These markets are going to get very fast up ahead, and you've got to have someone that can know what you want to do and then be able to do it. That's why brokers are absolutely important. Anyway, for the last 20 years, I've been advising mills, co-ops, regulators, sales agents, exchanges, you name it. I've spoken all over the world. I got 1 million miles on United alone, so I have been to Asia now and again.
And
thanks for
Asia is where this whole thing started that we're dealing with now.
This is an Asian-based thing. We've got a lot of acres coming in. We're going to have a big crop. Everybody knows that. Everybody tells you big crop, low prices. That may or may not
be rice, or are we talking about all grains right now?
Just rice, just rice.
Rice.
Rice has parted ways since last April with the rest of the ag complex. Meats are down, feed grains are down, beans, corn, even oats are down. And but rice has been going up, and the reasons why the rice price has been going up because while everything else is going down, there are good reasons. I've been bullish since last April. I'm a little bit bearish with the crop coming in, but not a lot bearish. It all depends what happens, as Stafford said, in Asia and to some extent in South America. There are 3 legs under the rice market, and one leg is trade, currencies, all that. Another is South America, where they speak Portuguese and Spanish, and they buy and sell a lot of rice. Brazil is actually larger than the US in terms of production, a big mover down there like we are in North America, and then Asia. Asia is the major league. We're in the minor leagues of rice in the Western Hemisphere.
You've, I get privy to read some of the stuff you put out to to the people you advise. You tend to think that there's the possibility this thing is way worse in Asia than what we know. Is that the COVID-19?
I've read a lot of research about virus and grain prices. And what appears to be the case is that when we've got a virus, the worse it is, the more the impact on grain prices. I'm rice for sure, but grain prices in generally go up, and they keep going up. The very worst one we've had in the last 500 years was in the 13th century. We had a 40% loss of life in Europe, and the wages went up, they tripled, and grain prices went up. In 1920, we had a virus similar to this one, and this thing's just getting started. It hasn't hit India, Russia, Indonesia, these countries yet. They're just getting where we're already at, and the emerging or less developed countries will be hit hard. Most of the rice is being exported, with the exception of China and maybe India, from emerging nations, and they're going to be hit really hard. They can't separate, they can't do social distance, and the poor are going to get hurt the worst. You need to pray for all those people you don't know out in Asia, and it's going to be terrible.
How do you, I know I don't want to get into politics necessarily, but do you think we've done a pretty good job in America of dealing with this all in all? I mean,
If you
are we
look at
seeing the worst of it now, or is this a longer term thing?
there doesn't seem to be a mitigating influence for warmer weather, so that's a concern. They were thinking originally that once the weather got warmer, everything would be hunky-dory. They don't know the nature of this beast. They've got no cure for it. Some people are yelling at the Republicans saying you didn't do anything, yelling at the Chinese, you hit everything. There's a lot of finger pointing, but if you look back at previous times, like during the Spanish flu, we not only had to deal with this, but we had World War I and people killing one another. And so the countries never told anybody what the death rate was, because they figured that means they'd have less soldiers and we could take them out.
That's interesting. I never thought about that, but that really did coincide in 1917, 1918, right at the same time.
Between 1916 and 1920, 1919 really, the price of rice tripled in all measures. And I'm telling my folks to be very careful of this market, because from the point of view of the US balance sheet, we're going to have a large amount of rice, but we don't amount to anything. If we grew another 500,000 acres this year, that's another 1 million metric tons in the market. But the market is almost like 45, 46 million tons. So what happens in this country really doesn't matter. The Brazilian price is at new record highs in local currency, which is called the real. And they have made their low, and the move is just beginning down there. And now we're starting to see motion in a number of markets that sell rice. And so what I'm just saying is, if you've got a good global pandemic, the grain prices, at least rice, I found, sort of go up.
Is that because it's a staple and it's relatively inexpensive on the plate, even if it does go up?
Even in wealthy countries like ours, if you got some rice in the pantry, it's a no-brainer grain. If you take the hull and you mill it down to milled rice, it's a no-brainer. You put it in a pot and boil it up, and you can eat it. Whereas with wheat, you have to mill it, and then you have to bake it into a pastry, and your family's going to judge you on whether you've done a good job or not.
It's an easy staple.
It is the shortest marketing chain of any grain, and in a market like this, that's really good news.
From field to fork, as we say, or from farm to fork, that's the shortest.
From your farm to your restaurant to the consumer is not very far at all.
At proof positive, we got in some rice from Two Brooks a couple of days ago and served it today. So directly off the farm.
I think all farmers are going to end up being millers and warehouse restaurant owners. You're my hero. You're where everything is headed. I know a farmer. Yeah, what's the name of his restaurant, sir?
Right. And I guess with that thought in mind, talking about the chain is one of the issues, the disruption we're going to see in delivery.
We've already seen it. We've seen it in delivery. There's three fears. One fear is that contagion, that you're going to get it. The next fear is that this condition will reduce the production in 2020 in these countries. And the third fear is you cannot identify who has the disease. So if you're a personnel at a port anywhere in the world right now, you're reluctant to go out there and risk your family. I mean, it's not like it's my daughter's a nurse down in San Antonio. She's a doctor, ER doctor. She risks her life every day to save people. But this is different. This is a boat. This isn't like a person. It's very difficult to get up the nerve to go out on a boat if they haven't had the temperatures taken and they don't have some kind of idea that these people are virus free. So the whole in New Orleans, in every port, everything's slowing down, even beans. After beans are loaded onto a vessel down in Brazil, they go 14,000 miles to get to a port where they may not let you unload. This is a very long distance market, particularly in the case of beans. The pilots don't want to go out on a vessel now until they have assurance that they're not going to get the virus by going out on that. They don't know where these people are from. They look at it as a cruise ship with commodity in the hull. It's like a bunch of people on it. Would you go on a cruise ship right now to dust things down? I don't think I would.
I'd rather not.
So what we've got is we've got a gummed up port facility. And when it starts, it just takes off. You got all the international economists saying India and China got more rice they know what to do with. But I've been picking up on some stories that saying they don't know what to do. They don't know what to do about their situation. The plane, the airports within the country of India are shut down. It's just a complete, utter shutdown. And if they don't handle it right, there's going to be reduced production in India. And as far as China goes, their early crop, they were going to have a really good early crop. And what they're seeing from the satellites is this stuff is not getting planted. So what you have is two countries. One is a great exporter, and they're not sure they're going to get the crop they thought they were. They say they're going to have production up the wazoo and they're going to be full of grain, but that's called the story. That's the government story. There is a famous German that said, I would never trust a rumor until it's officially denied. Not that I'm cynical, I just don't trust stuff coming out of governments, whether it's Trump or Moody or President Xi. I just, right now, I think they're after saving their skins, which is understandable. So
the issue with, I would imagine all products in the world right now is not going to be supply, it's going to be logistics. I
have a customer who's told me, Milo, I'm not in the trading business. One of the largest rice traders in the world. I said, well, what are you doing? He says, I'm in the logistics business.
Yeah.
And that didn't mean anything because logistics the rates were set and everything, but he has his hands full right now. I sent him a little email saying, I'm praying for you because I know what you're going through. I know he's in a virtual nightmare right now. Pray for some international grain trader. They mean well, and they're in a difficult situation, and they are your link to the world. We don't export half this crop, we're in trouble.
So is that what we have to export on rice is half the crop?
About half the crop, yeah, in long grain, it's about half the crop.
And is this going to be, I know I've heard you talk about the Americas kind of separate from Asia. Can we consume this in the Americas, the rice that's grown in the Americas?
I think we can. I think that I've been telling people for the second year in a row, we're going to have very tight stocks in South America. Okay, all the economists are saying in 2021, we're going to have big carryover stocks. I'm not so sure of that, but in 2020, it's very tight in the Western Hemisphere. And the way I look at I have an idea, and then I want to know what the price is going to do. So if I'm wrong about South America, then the price will go down to June, which it normally does. This year, it's already bottomed, it's gone to new highs. So when a market during harvest goes to new highs, that's kind of telling you they ain't got the rice. You take, for example, the country of Cuba. They can't buy from Vietnam. They're not exporting right now, and they can buy rice from Paraguay and Guyana cheaper than they can deliver it out of Asia. So Asia's missed the boat, and their prices are going up $100 a ton already. So if I were a good Cuban and a good communist, I would can the communism and buy from anybody that speaks Spanish or Portuguese and be done with it. That's 500,000 tons of rice I had counted on 3 weeks ago. They've done 180,000 tons from South America into Cuba in less than a year already. They didn't used to buy that way.
You know, you're saying that's something you didn't count on even 3 weeks ago. I guess that shows how volatile this whole scenario is. It just changes daily.
It happened, but I just hadn't gotten it out of anybody. Now I've gotten it out of every people that Cuba's buying a huge amount of rice out of the Western Hemisphere. Not buying from us because we've got kind of like a unfriendly relationship with them. But if they buy from South America, they're helping us out because that tightens the supply in the Western Hemisphere. It's very simple like that. And everything I have been looking at before this rally started, I was reading all this stuff about how viruses make the grain prices go up. And then I look and, oh my gosh, our market's going up. The rice market's going up, the wheat market, not so sure. The largest buyer of wheat in the world is Egypt. And they just put in order to buy a bunch of wheat. And the Russians are talking about shutting down, the Ukrainians cutting back, not because they don't have enough stuff, but they're a little worried that the price will go up and they'll sell too cheap. So they come out and they say, I'm not going to sell right now, I'll sell later. Also, they're having trouble moving it through the ports. So if you had a lot of wheat and a lot of rice and you knew the price was going to go up, why in the hell would you sell right now? That's my question.
So you're saying possibly because they're in fear that they may not be able to move it later, like logistically.
You can't move it now. The price is going to go up, and the less countries that sell rice, the higher the price is going to go. Now, on the other side, that rice eventually has to move. If you look what happened in 1916 to 1918, we had a world war and we had Spanish flu. We're not sure if this is worse, since the countries that are really going to get impacted haven't been affected yet, and that'd be India and Russia and Indonesia. All of our backyard for rice are just about to get what we've been going through in New York City. So we don't know where it is. I think it is conceivable that we could see the rice price anywhere. And eventually it's going to go down. It went down in 1919 because the war ended, the thing ended, and people had stocks they couldn't sell. So like in 2008, 2007, I told everybody to sell as slowly as I can. I'm saying big crop and maybe big prices, but sell as slowly as you can. That's what I'm telling most of my clients right now.
I think about the Russias and the Indias, and we know that one of the issues with this virus is that it's the underlying health conditions. Well, we know Russia and India are not healthy countries. So is it safe to say it's going to hit places like that a whole lot harder than it did the United States in terms of deaths?
My friends in India have nothing to protect themselves. They can't socially distance themselves. An idea of a city park without people in it, where else are they going to go? I mean, they had 50 million that died back in the Spanish flu. 40% of Europe died during the Great Black Plague. I'm not saying it's like that, but it hit people that were in congested areas. Even back in 1918, the density of population was much lower than it is now. The higher the density, the higher the risk, with nowhere to go. So sitting ducks, basically. And I don't say that with any relish at all. We don't need this. I am not in favor of rice price running up because people die or get infected. My daughter is putting her life on the line every day. I don't take any joy in this situation. It's like we're all in the state of war. We're all getting shot at, and you don't know who it is. If someone sneezes at you intentionally, you can get arrested as a terrorist now. Who ever thought that would happen in this country? I never did.
I don't think anybody did.
Mm-mm. We're dealing with a whole new world right now. And I think longer term, it's going to result in inflation of wages. It's going to result in higher grain prices. But it's not going to be the kind of thing the war was, because after the war, everything was destroyed. They had to build it back. None of the buildings are gone. None of the infrastructure is gone. Just the people are gone. So afterwards, it's going to be a very slow recovery. I don't mean to sound pessimistic, but I think this world is going to a bit disunited as we move down the line.
So not the kind of recovery you would expect where there's this huge influx of capital expenditures going on, because we don't have those problems. You can't just flip the switch and turn the economy back on.
You have to blow up the buildings as well as kill the people. Right now, we're just killing off the people, to be cynical about it, and we're not blowing up the buildings. And this is the worst kind of thing that can happen in an economy. But I'm very optimistic. I'm a small businessman. Most of my customers are optimistic. And I think if you're in rice right now, you're in the only ag commodity I can think of that's got a good price outlook to it. And I've been that way since last April. So it's not like I just came in as a bull yesterday. I was bullish through the whole crop harvested last year.
So it's almost like a lot of the things, and I've been listening to you for a while, so I know this, but a lot of what you've been looking at and talking about, this COVID-19 is kind of put all that in overdrive. Is that
it does?
fair?
That's right. What the COVID does is now you can't get the supply, and then we're worried about the crop in the ground. And the reason why I know that is that the Chinese have upped their support price for the spring rice crop. But you can't get people to plant something if they've got the illness. You can't get people in the field to plant if they've got the illness and they're dead. That doesn't help anything. So that late decision to raise the early rice price support in March says they're panicking. And I've seen satellite imagery from a private consultant that says the crop's not getting planted, either the wheat or rice during March. It's not getting planted like it should. It's all from the air.
So you think it's due to a fear of going out and doing things, or are they just that much illness out there? Or do we know?
I have a friend who knows a person in Wuhan, was very involved in the grain markets in China. And he said his assistant called him. This was 3 weeks ago when they had the National Grain and Feed meeting up here in Austin. And he said she thinks you can multiply the figures out of China by at least 100.
Wow.
Yeah.
Which we know China has a somewhat problem with accurate information. So not that we trusted them anyway, but that's an amazing.
They're like all politicians. They have to take care of their own skin, and they will put an official narrative out there. If you believe the official narrative, you get what you get. I don't believe official narratives. I've been in this thing 40 years. I've been all over Asia. I've talked to the heads of China grain trading and people out there. And they're just human beings. They're trying to tell a story that improves their business. And I understand that. But if there's a crop failure in Thailand, the people in Bangkok won't tell you when you pull up a rice plant up in Chiang Mai, there's no roots. That was in '87. I made millions off of that one because I said, there's no rice out there. And if there's no rice out there, there'll be no price out there for a while. So these are the kind of things that I've gotten used to, that they tell what's called official narrative. And I'm not against what they did. If I were in China, I'd shut up. But I'm not in China. I still live in a semi-free country. And we should be so grateful that we can talk about alternative narratives.
Absolutely. We have the freest media in the world, for sure.
Absolutely. Some people may not be impressed with them, but I'm not impressed with all the politicians either. So there you go. We need to pray for everybody. I'm telling you. We just need to pray for them. I don't care what skin or religion they are. These are all human beings and families. So to get back on rice again, yeah, there's a special situation I've been talking about for the last year in rice, and that is that India and China are swagging around, bragging about all the rice they're growing and all the stocks they have. But the rest of the world is letting their consumption decline relative to their production. It's not about stocks to use, but if you look at an area of the world and you ask, are they growing less stuff than they're consuming? The answer is, if you take out China and India, we've lost about 15 million metric tons of relative balance between production and consumption for those countries, the 100, 200 countries that buy rice in different quantities. Little people buying rice can add up to a lot, and all those countries are really scared. And I can understand why.
But what can the average person do right now? We talk about all these, besides obviously pray, but we'll have a lot of non-farmers watching this too. Do you have a message for them during, I think it's questionable. We're certainly going to have a recession. It's questionable if it's going to be worse than that, I think. What can the average person do during all of this?
As an economist, I always talk gobbledygook, and one of the gobbledygooks is that the increase in wages that I would anticipate out of this, depending how bad it is, that labor is going to gain on capital. So if you can buy something in an equity that has labor involved, then versus capital, you could probably make a little bit more money in this thing as you're ground feeding on the market. And so this particular
anything that's when you're going out there selling, you're selling more service than
exactly.
Yeah.
And you're the digger of the ditches, and you're charging for that service.
Gotcha.
So anything that's done with muscle, I think, is going to get an advantage. And I think everything comes back to the United States. I believe that God has given us the most incredible business opportunity here. So when you look at the Dow and the U.S. companies down, they're going to do so much better than other areas of the world. It's not even funny.
Where else can they go? To me, it's almost like after World War II, where we were literally the only country left standing. Financially, we're going to be in that same scenario, aren't we, when this is over?
We can provide credit to the world, and although if you look at it, labor is going to gain on capital, in my judgment, and we're going to have not much destruction of buildings or things like that. There'll be a lot of destruction of marketing chain and things like that, and people that can rewire marketing chain in a more efficient way are going to come out ahead, and the U.S. will rule technology for the next 100 years.
And is this a catalyst for that? I know you thought that for a while, but is this a catalyst for that now?
It speeds everything up. from years to months, maybe even weeks, in terms of what I've been thinking, that everything will come here. Everybody wants to be here. We don't need the rest of the world. We got Canada and Mexico and us. That's all we need. So anybody we help with our aircraft carriers or destroyers, it's because it's some kind of quid pro quo. We are not in the job anymore. If you look at China, it goes 5,000 miles to the Middle East to buy its energy and fertilizers and everything. And when it buys from South America, it goes 14,000 miles to make a delivery. So the 5,000 miles to get the energy and the fertilizer in, and the 14,000 miles to get the food in, will be unpoliced, except that we want to help them out.
You mentioned something that kind of just piqued my interest, mentioning Mexico, because they're kind of under our umbrella, regardless of what happens, I think.
Oh, yeah, they're going to do very well.
And you talking about labor, and obviously they've been a big producer of labor. That's probably their biggest export is labor. How big is this going to be for Mexico, possibly?
I hadn't thought it through, Stafford, but any place where you can invest in labor will make you more money than investing in capital, I think.
I got you.
I don't have an answer to that. I just started thinking about this. A lot of these thoughts came to me in the last month.
You know, you and I talk about this all the time, but Confucius said, may you live in interesting times, and that's more of a curse. It's certainly interesting, but it's a scary time to be alive a little bit. And
there was a German philosopher that said, if you want to know how the barn's built, watch it burn. This place is burning. But I believe that we have a police department, a fire department here, and we'll put our fires out quicker than anybody else as we get to the end of it.
I think you're right. You're going to ask the audience a question now. So what do you have for the audience?
It's all about rice acreage. There are three bearish things. There's a low oil price, there's a strong dollar, and U.S. rice acreage. And what I'm wondering is, will corn acreage shift into rice or beans as we move into the spring if we have continued wet patterns, or will everything get planted in rice and that's it? Is there anybody that's contemplating even moving more acres into rice in the next 60 days?
It's interesting you talk about that, because literally had this discussion with my banker yesterday. You know, we were planning on being 50% corn, 50% beans, and we have not planted a stalk of corn yet. So now we're looking at corn insurance and shifting some or all of that acreage into rice.
We're going to probably have the largest rice production in many, many years this year. But I say again, big production does not mean low prices.
Interesting. Mr. Hamilton, as always, thank you very much. It's Good Friday today, by the way, when we're filming this. It'll come out a few days later, but happy Easter to you. It'll probably be next week when it comes out. But my mom has a great quote because of coronavirus. She says, on Sunday, the churches may be empty, but so was the tomb.
That's it. That's my life in a nutshell. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.